Hello and welcome to our podcast, The Ups and Downs of a Small Business Owner, where we hope to show you exactly what it's like to grow a business. Today, I'm here with Kevin Sparks, founder of BigVoice. What is BigVoice?
BigVoice is a digital marketing agency, predominantly focusing on overworked marketing managers we're trying to help them sort of juggle less and achieve more by using an extension of our services. So whether it's technical or whether they just want to sort of like do some of the heavy lifting or allow us to do some of the heavy lifting, So ultimately that's what we do. We help SMEs, but individuals who are marketing managers in larger companies so that they can, because they're being pulled from pillar to post. They're doing Christmas parties, they're doing the brochure, they're doing the socials, the digital ads, etc. So we just act as an opportunity for them to alleviate some of the work, but also
Social media marketing?
no, I wanted to be a footballer. But no, I mean, I left school. I did graphic design at college in Northampton. I passed, but I came out of that, and like any sort of teenager, I wanted cash. I wanted to go on holiday with my friends. So I ended up going into various different jobs, and eventually found myself in the corporate world, in sales and marketing for companies like Minolta and TalkTalk, where I run the sales and marketing team down in London.
Okay.
And then from that, I was there for probably about 8 years. Like I say, I really enjoyed it, but it was kind of at the sort of height of when things like dial-up and broadband were switching. There was a lot of acquisition, a lot of companies being acquired. I don't know if you remember people like Wanadoo and FreeServe and Tiscali and people like that, but they were being acquired by companies like TalkTalk. So I ended up becoming like 10,000 plus people in a building. I was on a floor with 400 people and I didn't know anyone, even though some of them were in my team because they were through acquisition. So I ended up leaving. Then there's voluntary redundancy. I grabbed it with both hands. I left. I ended up working for a completely different size business with 8 people, which was a tech startup. I worked for about 10 years for 3 different tech startups, VC funded, 2 of which I kind of was the first person in the UK for them. So they were well established offshore in like France, Germany, etc. And I helped them enter the UK market. And I was spending obviously other people's money, the VCs, but I would do everything. I'd find an office, I'd hire a team, I'd do the sales pipeline, I'd do the marketing, I'd do the events, etc. Get them up to about sort of 10 people. And after about 3 or 4 years, my kind of job was done, if you like, and then I'd move on to the next tech company. The 3 companies, one still exists now, the other 2 were acquired, so quite a successful sort of. But that's where the challenge was, because naively I thought this is easy running businesses. I could do this, and then 2, I had to spend my own money, and then it was a complete shift. But the reason BigVoice came about was I was on garden leave with the last company I worked with. I was in a period of a non-compete, so I weren't allowed to go and work for another tech company for like, I don't know, 6 to 9 months, something like that. I was asked by a friend to help out with some marketing, and quite frankly, I knew more than they did. So I helped them out. They referred me to somebody else. I thought this could be a good little side hustle. And BigVoice was born with the aim of helping small businesses get a bigger voice. Lockdown then kicked in, and all of a sudden this side hustle became a reality, and I had to make something of it. I suppose the good thing was I was able to sort of diversify the offering and get some really good people in lockdown. So I've got a small team. There's myself and sort of 4 others. And they've been with me pretty much since sort of like 2019, 2020. So that's been really good because there's been a consistency of people who I can always sort of rely on. And that's how BigVoice was born. And like I say, it's chopped and changed a little bit over the time, as in like the demographic of clients, etc. But yeah, like I say, we've really found our niche now. It's helping marketing managers, like I say, juggle less and achieve more.
So I guess when you went to like them small businesses, did you
Mm-hmm.
get kind of caught like the excitement and the thrill of being in them small businesses, and that's why you kind of went for it yourself?
Yeah, I suppose the bureaucracy and the politics of like large companies. It was you had to almost get permission to do anything, and then of course there was, like I say, navigating certain people in the business because you knew they were influential or sponsors, etc. So it was very much like that, and I felt people were just treading on people to sort of climb the corporate ladder. I didn't really enjoy it, and then when I worked for a smaller company, I just found it so collaborative. It was just really everyone pulling in the same direction, and also you could contribute and see the output within days, weeks, whatever. And I really like that. I like the fact that we could sort of discuss ideas and conceptualize, and things actually happened rather than going through some sort of management process.
Yeah. And yeah, exactly that. Even hours, like you can
Yeah.
see that real live impact, and it makes a big difference. You've mentioned a few people around you. So how important have them people been?
They've been. I don't think it would be BigVoice would actually still be the business it is if it wasn't for them, because quite frankly, I got myself certified with things like advertising, social advertising, so things like Meta. But a byproduct of that, a lot of the time, were can you do SEO? Can you do social media marketing? Can you do email? Can you create content, graphic design, etc.? And the answer, quite frankly, was personally no. I'm a Canva user. I'm not Adobe products. I'm not a copywriter. I'm not particularly great with SEO, even though I understand the concepts of it. So I found good people who specialised in those things. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with. There's a term called T marketers, which is you're kind of good at you understand everything, but you're really good at one thing. Hence the letter T. And that was me. I was really good at ads. But actually, when it comes to SEO and graphic design and all those other bits, I needed good people around me. And finding a social media manager and an SEO expert and a copywriter and a graphic designer really helped. It helped to fill those gaps.
Because I guess that's probably one of the key things that people kind of assume, marketing, you can do marketing.
Yep.
But there is so many different parts to marketing, so many different channels. Even just in social media, like you've got Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn,
Yeah.
TikTok. I don't even know what else.
Yeah.
X. How do you stay on top of all of them changing all of the time?
Well, I think so. What we say a lot of the time to clients is you've got a channel, you've got a platform that you're particularly strong at, you like engaging with, you understand it, it's got your demographic on it, etc. Focus on that. Make that your pillar platform. Make that the platform where you do most of your social media activity. And then have maybe a second or a third platform. And maybe the second platform would be where you you share some of that ideas as well, but you can obviously differentiate with the content because no one wants to follow you on LinkedIn if the same stuff is as it is on Instagram. And then the third channel, humanize it, behind the scenes, let people know about you. Even if it is you're just having lunch in some sort of swanky restaurant or whatever, just humanize the experience so people can relate to you because ultimately you are the business. So, but I appreciate what works on Insta or TikTok might not work on LinkedIn. So it's just understanding the platform that works for you best and then working with that one. So obviously, if you're into aesthetics, you may find Insta and TikTok is much better. If you're an accountant, you may find that LinkedIn is a much better platform for you.
So I guess this is an interesting one, and I'm going to dive into this personally here. But
Okay.
Yeah, LinkedIn, stereotypically, you'd expect accountants to be. Actually, when I've looked at it, I think Instagram has a better response because possibly there's less accountants on Instagram,
Yeah.
or if you do the right content, it scores better on Instagram. But LinkedIn, although I'm predominantly on LinkedIn, I post all of my stuff on LinkedIn. Only now, whilst talking to you, I remember a couple of years ago I did a test, Instagram and LinkedIn, and Instagram scored so much higher. So really? I don't know why I've not dived into that a bit more, and I probably need to do that more. But I guess it's interesting. You almost need to try each of them to work out which one does work best for you.
Yeah. I mean, analytics is a key thing. You've got to measure the return. So if you're not measuring the return of your marketing effort and your marketing spend, it kind of you must question why you're doing it, because you've got to be aware of what's working and what isn't. So even from an engagement perspective or from a reach perspective, if you're posting stuff on Instagram and you're finding the levels of engagement and reach and comments and shares and that type of thing is more impressive, then really you should be pursuing that. And also, like you just said there, if you think about an offline analogy, if you put up a restaurant or a takeaway in a high street where there's no other takeaways, you're probably going to get most of the business. But to be in central, like Milton Keynes, for example, competing with all the other takeaways because there's an element of you think that's the right thing to do, is probably not right. Let the data drive you. Let it be data driven.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've got to capture that information over a period of time. Don't just do one post and then think, right, that's it, I'm switching everything over. It's got to be something that's done over a period of time.
On that, you just made me think of a story I heard once. It was like talking about ice cream vans on a beach. I don't know if you've heard that.
No, I haven't, no.
Basically, they had ice cream vans either end of the beach.
Okay.
Which means there's a 50-50 split. Then one of them moved 25% over, which meant that they got the 25% that they'd left this side,
yep.
and they got the 50% of this side. So suddenly they've hit 75%, and this other side is only hitting 25% because everybody goes to the closest ice cream van.
Right.
So then this one moves over. So in the end, they both ended up side by side in the middle because that's where the footfall was all going, and then people would choose between them. So that's why, like, a lot of like the burger shops, like McDonald's, Burger King, things like that, they will often open right next door to each other because if you're going for a burger, you then have a choice of which one. Whereas if you've only got one that's close to you, you'll only go to the closest one.
Yep.
So I guess that's kind of footfall, but that's almost kind of the polar opposite of what you've mentioned, like,
it is
from social media, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose it really depends on what you're trying to achieve. I mean, I imagine the profit margins at something like a service station are a lot greater than they are on the high street because they haven't got the competition. Yeah. So it's it's what you're after, I suppose. If you're after market share, then you want a service station, maybe model. But if you're after maybe a volume of revenue, then maybe the high footfall areas are going to serve you better.
So I'm going to kind of come right back again. Sorry, okay. I do jump around a bit.
That's all right.
Going back to, you mentioned like venture capital, so VC, venture capital, that's basically people pumping a load of money into these businesses. So they've got money behind them. And that's what you did for a few years. How is it going from, you did kind of mention it, but the money, obviously it's not your money. It's kind of like a almost endless supply. It's a good chunk and it keeps coming in. Whereas when you go on your own and you're seeing them numbers, which are possibly much lower, in my opinion, they would be.
Oh, yeah.
What's going through your head at that point?
Let me just say straight off the bat, it's substantially lower. I was selling to people like Tesco's and Vodafone, had €5 million in the first round of funding. I had access to a lot of that budget through being the subsidiary in the UK. I was spending a lot more money on big events, etc. Then I'm all of a sudden, the reality is I'm striving for that first 100K and I'm doing roller banners at some sort of community hall. It's night and day, the difference in what you can achieve. And it was a reality check. I did have to adjust. I think lockdown helped that because even though it was a tough time for many of us, it was an opportunity to work with lots of different size business. A lot of people are switching career as well. So it was quite an interesting journey to go on that with them. So as much as I felt it was, commercially not the same in comparison, it was probably more relatable and interesting because I was on that journey myself.
Okay. And what would you say has been your biggest or your toughest moment?
I'd probably say the toughest moment was because I used to sell software as a service, SaaS, and it was with these VC funded techs. So they were into big retailers, like I mentioned. The biggest challenge was when I originally started BigVoice, I focused predominantly on e-commerce businesses. When lockdown hit, I thought I was bulletproof. I generally thought I'm absolutely going to rake this in because it's a digital product. People are going to be buying online. They're going to be doing a lot of this from home because we're in lockdown. What I didn't foresee was supply chain. So, of course, a lot of these e-commerce companies that I was working with at the time couldn't get their products from offshore. And therefore, they stopped. The first thing they did, because they couldn't get a product, they don't need marketing. So I lost probably about 75% of the client base I had at the time within about a week. So that was where I had to diversify, and all of a sudden started working with gyms and, small local businesses in order to sort of maintain the business and keep it going. But again, that's helped with is that for every sort of low, I suppose there is a high. What that allowed me to do is understand where we are now is that the ones that we've worked with now, the clients that we have now who really appreciate and have stayed with us throughout the journey have been the ones where they are, like I say, they're a small marketing team or an individual in a larger business that's kind of pulled from pillar to post, and they're overworked or even overwhelmed with the volume of requirements they have. So even if we just do one element of that, say like the techie part, then it just takes that pressure off them.
So you kind of said like you lost 75% of your business within a week. What's going through your head at that point?
Panic. Panic, and I suppose I had a slight resentment at the time before, because obviously I'd been in corporate world or in that paid employment, PAYE, for 20 years. And I'd never really, I'm not really one of these people to sort of have much time off. I'd always accrue holiday. I've got a good work ethic. And when lockdown hit and I lost that business, all around me were people getting paid to sit in the sun on furlough. And I remember thinking, I was feeling a bit sorry for myself. I'd been, given a bad deal here. So it was just instead of sort of like, being all doom and gloom about it, just react, and the best way of doing that was just to start reaching out to people and having conversations. And it was through that I started to see some sort of light.
Did you talk to anyone at that time?
Professionally or?
I guess like even your wife or partner or anything else, like when you see things going downhill and it's tough and other people are coping perfectly fine sunbathing because they're being paid to do that, like who do you have to talk to?
Yeah, I've got a wife and 3 daughters. Probably wasn't the ideal time. My wife's a teacher. My 3 girls were transitioning to secondary school. So had one in secondary school, one in year 6, one still in year 4. And it was really tough, especially for the one who was in year 7, because she had just joined a secondary school where she only knew 1 or 2 people. And then all of a sudden she was without them. Trying to homeschool children of that age was challenging. Trying to work from home whilst 3 kids are legging it about and being disruptive. So my wife, she took a lot of the sort of, I suppose, the, me sort of bouncing ideas of her, talking about her, saying, what we're going to do with regards to, providing an income, et cetera, et cetera. And is this a good idea? Should I go back to PAYE, et cetera? But obviously the choices were limited then. So there was only really one option, and that was graft. And that's what I did.
So she didn't say to you, like, actually just go back to get a job or anything like that?
No, we've had a few of those conversations in the past, but but she's been really supportive. I'll be really honest. So I remember I paid quite a lot of money to get myself originally. I wanted to fast track my sort of certification on Meta. And I ended up paying, several £1,000s in order to sort of like do it through a private agency so that I could fast track it, because I believed there was an opportunity to sort of resell these services. And little things like that she would sort of, I think, wince at, because she's like, That's effectively like a holiday or something like that. And also it was a commitment without having the regular income, so things like that. She's sort of been supportive of verbally. I think possibly she's probably thinking, I hope this really works out. But she said the right things, and that's what you need to hear, isn't it?
At the right time.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess flipping that, what's been your biggest success?
I suppose for me, well, I think building the team, I didn't realize it at the time, was a real good success, but I think it's also landing certain types of clients. And again, it's not to be derogatory to the clients that I did have before. It's just all of a sudden to land clients who had 100 employees, etc. It felt like a real business then. We got our office space. It's only a shared office space, but it's in Whitton Studios, and it just felt real, that we just felt like a proper business now. But like I say, I've gone from, smaller clients, solopreneurs, people who are running like Pilates classes, etc., to people like Cranfield University. And that really made me feel initially intimidated because I wondered if we could actually manage the workload, but then really proud because they're obviously a recognised sort of institution locally, and it felt really good to be working with them. So I'd say that, on a personally, maybe a slightly ego thing, but I felt like a sense of achievement and pride with that.
Absolutely. I'd say that is quite an achievement in itself. And do you find like almost your client base starts to move with you as you're getting bigger? you're attracting these bigger clients and less so the smaller ones, because that's where you're going on your journey.
Thing is, the smaller ones have been the lifeblood of our business. So certainly not, trying not to attract those clients. I think what's happened is that we've naturally started to attract slightly larger businesses. I'd say, up to 100 employees. But some of those have only been, say, 9 or 10 people. Some of them have been, like I say, 100 employees. But generally, they've all got the same problem, which is they've got an individual who's responsible for marketing, who's only knows certain elements. So, for example, a bit like myself, only knew how to do social, but didn't know how to run ads or didn't know how to do SEO, etc. And also in some of those organizations, it's the business manager, the business owner who's scrutinizing everything from a cost perspective. And so they want a measurable return. And obviously we're a lot cheaper than an employee for some of those services. And of course, there's no pension, there's no PAYE, there's no cost. And also they can get rid of us anytime if they want to. We don't offer any sort of contractual obligations. So it's something we definitely have a lot of small clients still. But we are getting one or two larger ones now, which is nice.
That's good. Is it ever crossed your mind that BigVoice isn't going to work and you need to walk away?
Yes. Obviously during lockdown, and then after I really struggled to position BigVoice because so recently joined the NatWest Accelerator. A big part of that was figuring out your vision and understanding what where your journey is going to take you, and a lot of the businesses on the cohort had really good they had a really clear vision. They had built their business from a deep-rooted sense of personal sort of commitment and desire. They had really sort of like modern things like diversification and inclusion and sustainability. And I felt kind of a bit vanilla. It was like, we're a digital marketing agency. We provide many different types of services to different types of organization. So we didn't really specialize. But actually, when we looked at our client base, it was those overworked, overwhelmed marketing people that needed our help. So that's the route we've taken. And that's what's been successful with regards to the larger clients.
So I guess also on the NatWest entrepreneurs course,
Yep.
It's great. It kind of gives you like all the different pillars of a business or all the different hats, depending on who you talk to and how they word it. But how important has knowing the numbers been?
Yeah, I have to admit, hands up, I was pretty bad at that at the beginning. I was very revenue hungry, but not particularly aware of costs. So I'd have subscription after subscription. I'm a bit of a course junkie. I love learning. I'm always signing up to these new sort of things and thinking, yeah, that's what we need. So whether it's something to do with AI or automation or whatever it might be, I'm throwing myself into it to learn a new skill. And those subscription costs mount up, those costs mount up, those courses mount up. But of course, I wasn't really monitoring that very well. So of course you realise that you get to sort of like year end or end of a quarter, you notice your margins are less than they were, but you're thinking we've taken on new clients, our retention is pretty good, but it's the other factors. It was like I say, it was things like subscription and other costs, or even sometimes outsourcing work to specialists. Those sort of things weren't being factored in. So it was it was a something to learn, and it was a bit of an oversight at the time, but definitely something I had to grapple later on. It took me a couple of years really to really figure out the value of an accountant and a bookkeeper.
Did you almost kind of hide away from the numbers then?
Yeah, I think so, because it's a reality check. It's there right in your face that you're only turning over X amount, or your profit margins are only this. And like I say, it's a bit like I used to say to people, but with regards to social media, it's not how many followers you got, it's about how engaged they are. So otherwise it's a vanity metric. So I think from a numbers perspective, that's kind of what I was doing. I was very much focusing on the acquisition, because it's a vanity metric in the sense of, look at me, I'm really proud I'm getting a customer every week or every month or whatever it might be. But I wasn't looking at maybe the retention figure, or I wasn't looking at the cost implication, or the fact that new people were coming on. So one or two guys joined the team, or we're outsourcing a bit of work. And of course, that does have a knock on effect to your figures. But I was only focusing on that more positive metric. So, and I think, like I say, it was really difficult to sort of then go, you need to do this on a regular basis and you need to hold yourself accountable.
Yeah. And, and that's it. It's almost, if you don't like the numbers, you just avoid them.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
Which is, in my opinion, one of the worst things you can do, because you need to know them to be able to run a business. Otherwise, again, in my opinion, you're running blind.
Yeah.
Like, how can you make changes, improvements, spend money if you don't know what's going on or where it is or where it's coming from? Obviously, I'm slightly biased on that one. So coming forward then, have you ever had a mentor?
Not with regards to BigVoice. I've had people that I would probably wish to aspire to or respect. But with regards to an actual mentor, no, in previous roles I have. But that's only because they had been successful in doing something I was aiming to achieve, which was, in this case, helping a VC-funded tech startup exit. So I took a lot of their advice, and heeded a lot of what they say, really, because they were somebody that I respected, and they'd proven that they'd done it, and that was it. So, whereas I don't know anyone who runs a marketing agency, well, I do now, but I didn't at the time. I felt inferior to them, brutally honest, because there's some large agencies in Milton Keynes, and I certainly didn't feel that it wasn't even competing at that level, or differentiating. What was the standout? So yeah, I think we all go through a bit of imposter syndrome at some point, and there was very much that in place. But I didn't have a mentor at the time to kind of like drag me out of it, which probably would have been helpful.
Do you think it would be beneficial to have one now?
Absolutely, yeah, 100%. I mean, for me to have somebody now to help navigate some of the sort of challenges of obviously growth, and also what to focus on, especially as we go into a new year, I'd really welcome that 100%.
So, kind of going back to kind of when you first started BigVoice, if you could go back and do it all again, would you?
Yes. Yes, I would, because as much as there were challenges, I would do it again, but I would do it in a way that was probably a little bit more structured and committed in certain areas. I worked hard and I grafted in order to keep the business afloat and some revenue coming in. However, I didn't align that to anything. It was kind of just I reacted. And I kind of, if I could start again, it would be much more structured around what that outcome was going to be. Like I say, I think it took a few years to sort of get there. And I very much treated it like a side hustle or a lifestyle business, which isn't a bad thing because, I could, take Friday off if I wanted to, or, take the kids to school at the time or do the school run. So there were lots of elements of it that were beneficial, but I've now, got to a point where growth is the focus, and I feel clear we know our niche, and that's really what I wish I'd kind of figured out in the first year.
You mentioned like the kids and things like that.
Yeah.
Does that have an impact? Does this have an impact at home when you're with the kids? Like running a business isn't easy. It's not certainly not an easy sort of 9 till 5.
Yeah.
Switch off, go home, job done. So do you think that's helped you at home, or is it stressful trying to do both?
It's stressful trying to do both. I think it's hard having 3 teenage daughters anyway, but to do that, and obviously we have a small office space, but quite frankly, I work a lot from home. There's been many occasions when, you're on a call or, and they're coming home, crashing through the door at R3 from school, shouting, can they have something to eat, or, can I go out, or whatever it might be. So, and, you're trying to ignore these sort of requests whilst maintain some sort of professionalism on this call. And, you can see them in the peripheral sort of waving at you saying, can they have a biscuit or something? I don't know, whatever. And actually just thinking, trying to gesture with your hand whilst out of sight of the video. So there's been lots of times like that, but also the stress as well. Like you lose a client, and sometimes that can be it can almost feel personal, because you think, I've added value for like the last 2 years. We've worked with you, and all of a sudden you've just decided to bring somebody in internally and replace us. But it's part of their own growth, and we contributed to some of that. So you shouldn't take it like that. I mean, there's never less disgruntled. They've always been very, polite in doing so. But obviously the kids never understand that. And obviously dad's just, he's in a bit of a mood today or whatever it might be. So yeah, I think it definitely has an impact on your home life.
Is it hard to juggle that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it was probably harder in lockdown, like I say, because of the homeschooling and all the other bits. But as they have got older, they're much more independent. In fact, one of my clients actually at the moment, which has actually been really helpful with one of the kids, because one of the kids at the moment, she's at a veterinary college and she wants work experience, and they just happen to be involved in that sector. So they've offered her work experience, which was really good of them. So there have been some sort of benefits to owning the business and also having a client base that can support that type of request. But, they're kids. I mean, as much as I love them, they can be extremely selfish because that's what children are to a degree. And they're very much just focused on themselves. And I think they think I'm at home sometimes as opposed to working. So, that can, like I say, bring its own challenges.
So you kind of mentioned, you go back to the beginning, but if you could give yourself one bit of advice for when you're starting up, what would it be?
Be clear on where you want to get to, and probably partner or get a mentor for that journey, because there is some lonely times and there's some challenging times, and it's not fair necessarily to rely on your partner, your wife, etc., because they're not having a shared experience. They're employed. They don't really understand the pains. They can empathize to a degree because they're in my case, my wife, but they can't contribute in a valuable way that can you can relate to it, because they're not going through that experience. And unfortunately, a lot of people around you who are also on that journey are very much focused on their own business. And I wish I'd kind of maybe got together with a small cohort of business owners and thrashed it out with them and understood their pain points and challenges, so that we could all advise each other. So yeah, if I could start again, it would be get that small group of collaborative people, or a mentor, or a business partner. I think having somebody that I could have sort of shared the experience with would have been great.
So do you have anyone now?
No, no, because like I say, we've done the hard yards, if you like, and got to a point where there's recurring revenue, there's clients, there's a small team, and it's a different proposition now. It's very much, it's those early years, when you sort of conceptualize and you think of ideas and where do we go and what should we niche down in, what sector, what products, what services, how should we deliver this service, and also, like I say, it's very difficult to deliver a service and be the sort of the sales lead, or it's challenging. And I think if I'd had someone to sort of share the load with, I could have focused on growth, for example, with my sales background, whereas they could have maybe focused on the service side of things.
So would you say it's less lonely now?
It is. I mean, it's still like, the way life is now with digital, and sort of, like I think I said, there's a small team and they're really good people, but they're not, and they're really, invested into the clients and doing the work, but they're not invested in so much of the business because it's not theirs. So yeah, you can talk to them. I've got a really open relationship with them. I talk to them, quite candidly, but they're not going through it. So it's, it can be a lonely place. So I suppose from that side, it's nice to sort of bounce off local networking groups and understand what they're going through. But everyone's a little bit, it takes time to sort of get people to drop their guard a little bit and be open about how they are in their business, because it can be a struggle. So yeah, there's been some definitely ups and downs.
So looking into the future then, where do you see yourself going now?
I would love to get BigVoice to a certain size. I'd like to have a team, probably 10, 15 people. I'd like to have a rural office location, very much like yourself, so that I can sort of have that sort of environment that sort of helps us thrive. I'd like to work with some other organisations in Milton Keynes. I won't mention them, but there are certain organisations in Milton Keynes that I feel would be really, really good clients. I feel like I would add a lot of value, but also, like I say, those sort of logos, that sort of like achievement, just feeling great that you got that, that recognition of a brand or a company like those. So I'd like to get it there. I want to hit that. I want to smash that £1 million barrier. I think we all want to get to that point. That's
revenue.
Yeah, that's for me. That's the aim.
So what does that actually mean?
Well, it means that I've got to get a client a month for the next 3 years at the retainer levels that we have in place now. So yeah, that could be achievable, and it seems achievable because when you break it down to a monthly, client a month doesn't sound like a huge ask. It's just making sure they're the right type of client, and that, again, as we acquire more clients, we obviously need to grow as a team, and obviously there's an offset in other costs.
So that's the target: a client a month for 3 years.
Yep.
And then you've completed it.
Not completed it, but I think I'll be in a position where I could then start to think about what next. And ultimately, from a personal perspective, where would I like to be? I'd like to have the option not to have to be restricted to a location. I'd like the option to be able to still be able to work in the business, but not on the business, but not in it. I would like to be, I think maybe I can't think of anything better than sort of waking up in a nice sort of warm environment offshore somewhere and just, deciding, it's 11 a.m. I think I'll contribute a little bit today, but not feeling the need to have to, but still be proud of the progression and the growth. I don't necessarily have any firm views on whether to exit, etc., but I'm focusing on now. I suppose it's a bit like if you use the analogy like a football manager, there's no point thinking about winning the Premiership. You've got to focus on each game. And so for me, month by month, get those clients, and then maybe 3-4 years from now, we can have that conversation.
And I mean, the fact that you've already worked that out is quite impressive, because there's a lot of people who haven't worked any of that out.
Yep.
So one client a month actually doesn't sound too difficult, as long as you know what the lead times are and you've worked backwards from there.
Yep.
And how you're finding them, what the acquisition costs are, and everything like that.
Yep.
So it sounds like you're on a good path. Do you have a legacy that you'd like to leave behind?
I suppose it would be helping other businesses locally. I mean, I like helping businesses that help other businesses, or other people. So, I assume we've all worked with clients that are very much looking to feather their own nest, and that's great. And obviously they've got a vision and somewhere they want to go. But personally, I would love it if I could, be in a position locally in Milton Keynes where the legacy is that we helped, these 40, 50 companies, whatever, get to a certain point in their journey as well. Obviously, it's a shared investment, because if they were to grow, then the likelihood is we would grow as well. But that would be a real achievement, because it's not just so personally invested; it's seeing that growth in the city as well,
and the businesses around us.
Yeah, exactly.
I say Milton Keynes is growing at a rapid rate, and there's a lot of businesses starting up. I think it was one of the top cities in the UK that for business startups in the last 2 years. So it is quite impressive. I am a big investment in AI. Like, I love getting involved, learning about it, seeing what it does. So is it having an impact on your role?
I think it's, I mean, it depends on your view. I mean, personally, we've embraced it rather than see it as a threat. But ultimately, there are elements, within the business where, for example, copywriting has been, like things like Jasper AI, etc. I mean, these are tools that are getting better and better. They've got humanization features on them. They got, personally, we use it for a lot of operational sort of stuff, like creating certain sort of things, like, for example, client contracts, onboarding documents, things like that, and then we'll personalize them. We'll go through and it gives us a structure. Automation is a big part of what we do now. So whether or not that's email automation, WhatsApp, whatever it might be, there are automation tools in there, and of course some of those use advanced features of AI, as in advertising. So Meta, Google, they've all got AI type features built into them now. And obviously search engine optimization, that's massively changed, because we all know if you go on Google now and you search anything, you've got something called search generative experience, which essentially is giving you sort of synopsis and snippets of information, so you don't have to go and scroll through loads of websites. So we have to approach that whole search engine optimization and ranking in a completely different way to what we did previously. So it's all learning, and it's all good things to help us sort of adapt and diversify in what we do. But I think not to embrace it would mean it would probably result in a lack of growth. It's here now, and I think it's going to emerge and get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think we would be foolish to ignore it from a business perspective. I don't know how much I feel about it, sort of driverless cars and things. I don't know how much all that, but time will tell.
See, I'm completely sold on the driverless cars.
Oh yeah,
I think. From a job point of view, it's going to be tough. All you've got to do is look at the amount of black cabs in London, and if you think driverless cabs come to London, like, suddenly, how many hundreds of people, thousands of people are replaced overnight?
Yeah.
But I do think it's going to also then provide jobs in other areas. So absolutely, it's going to wipe out certain things. It's going to, I'd also say, like, things like graphic design and stuff, it's going to be a tough one.
Yeah.
Because I've seen it, like, you can literally type out, I want to see a purple mushroom on the Eiffel Tower, and it will literally produce that image like that. Not perfectly. Some of it's struggled with, like, hands and feet and faces. Like, some of the AI is awful with that. But if it's only going to keep improving, with 5 or 6 words, you can create images in seconds. Like, it's crazy what it will do, but it still doesn't stop. You need the creativity to come up with the idea to then put it in.
Yeah.
So it still needs these creative people to create them. It's just, instead of them going away and drawing it and spending hours drawing it, and then actually now they do it on the computer, it will just be enter the keywords that they want to put in and knowing how to prompt.
Yeah, it probably appeals to a different type of person because, like I say, if you are a graphic designer and you are creative and you you get something from that sort of conceptual and visualization side of things, typing words won't give you the same sort of like element. I understand what you're saying completely. And you're right, AI has to be trained. So it's only, kind of the analogy, isn't it? Rubbish in, rubbish out. So unless you're training it properly and commanding it and given the right types of information on that, you're not going to get the outcomes you want. Whereas what I like about a graphic designer or an individual is the fact that you can kind of just give them a basic brief or allow them to sort of visualize and create. AI, you still have to instruct and train.
Yeah. Although I guess it will make it easier for people to get into that field.
Yeah.
Who aren't thinking in that way, or certainly I'm not capable of drawing anything. Like,
No, me neither.
You don't want to see any of my pictures, but it would allow me to kind of do a basic. I guess it's more the entry level stuff that's getting replaced at the moment.
Oh yeah, 100%. They've all got features built into them now, haven't they? Obviously there's a lot of independent websites, but you only have to go on Adobe stock or Shutterstock or Canva. They've all got AI features in them, so it's here to stay. It'd be foolish to ignore it.
And embrace.
Yeah, embrace it. Yeah.
So at the end of the podcast, we do these Diary of a CEO cards.
Okay.
Grab these. So I don't know if you've seen Diary of a CEO.
Yep.
Or heard it, but basically they have these conversation cards, and what we do is we choose one each to ask each other.
Okay.
So if you choose one for me, then.
All right. Middle of the pack.
I'll get one for you in a minute.
Shall I read this?
Yeah.
Okay. What is the one thing you regret not saying to somebody and why you didn't say it?
Not saying to somebody.
That's a tough one, isn't it?
That is a tough one. I would.
It's really difficult, isn't it? From a business perspective, it's tough to think of. I could think of probably about, when I was in primary school, not asking a girl out. Well, yeah. You know what I mean? That type of thing. But I hope from a business perspective.
Even personally, I think I've been on this journey for a while, and I've been trying to be as open as I can with everything and everyone. What's the one thing you regret not saying to somebody, and why didn't you say it? I think so. If we go back a couple of months, I could probably answer this. So, my dad, I kind of have been kind of looking at relationships and stuff like that, and we've got a great relationship. We're like almost like brothers, and it's great. Although when I talked, I said to a few people, I can't remember the last time I hugged him, for example.
Right. Yeah.
Or the last time I said I love you or anything like that, because I'm a man. I don't say them things, and it's not cool to say it or anything like that. So I don't think I've said that, or I hadn't said that in a long time. I hadn't hugged him. There wasn't any affection.
Yeah.
And I think it was when my granddad passed, it kind of made me think, actually, I could never hug my dad again. I don't want to be like that. So I think if you'd have asked me a couple of months ago, that's what I would have said. It's actually, I regret that, and I really want to just hug him.
Yeah.
But there was something in me that was like, no, I'm a man. I don't do that. I have to be kind of macho or whatever it is. But Actually, at my wedding, like when I got ready in my suit, I stood there and he came over and just hugged me. So that was like, that was incredible. And that was like, I don't know what to do here. This is a strange feeling. So, I guess, yeah, I didn't really say I love you or anything to them. Since a couple of months ago and talking about stuff like this and hearing stuff like this, I've said it to my brothers, who it really threw. At the end of a phone call, I was like, I love you. And he was like, oh, I love you too.
Okay.
And it really, like, we've never said that to each other,
Yeah.
but it really kind of threw them. So I'd say it's being more open or honest with myself.
Yeah, that's a good response and a good one. I've grown up in a house full of women, and my family, like I say, I've got 3 girls now as well, and it's just so there's always been quite a sort of open, sort of, we're very open, like open with emotions and that. I'm probably more of a diva than any of them, if I'm honest. But it's, but yeah, that being able to sort of like.
Okay. What is your dark side?
My dark side, I'd probably say intolerance. As I'm getting older, I'm definitely going down the cantankerous old git route. Now, I don't know if that's just an age thing, but I'm definitely turning into more of a sort of Jack D type character. I'm sort of getting disgruntled with every single little thing. Somebody doesn't pick up their dog poo when I'm on a dog walk, or the guy in front of me he goes over the white lines when he parks or whatever. It's just like, I just feel compelled to say something. And I feel like I'm doing it sort of for like the community, if you like. I saw some kids smashing some bottles the other day against a bin, just throwing them onto it. But again, it's a red way. It's like, kids on their bikes, dogs walking and that. And I sort of yelled at them and that. But, in today's society, it's the sort of thing that, somebody can come over and go, what are you talking to my son like that for? But actually, they'll be in little gits, and quite frankly, then I just went, oh, you lot, and they all sort of scarpered. But sometimes they can creep into things to do with work, because I get intolerant that that it's just not happening quick enough, or that it's just the decision making in the process is just taking too long, or we're not, like I say, we're not able to get that client, or whatever it might be. So it's like a frustration and intolerance thing, but it's also kind of part of the driving force as well, because I'm very self-critical, and I think sometimes that can be something that you sort of then go, right, well, instead of self-absorbing and getting sort of wound up by things, do something about it,
make it happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that's not the worst dark side you could have. It's definitely
Right.
definitely one, a grumpy old man, essentially, is what you've just said. Yeah. I mean, I think everyone kind of gets there, don't they?
Yeah, it's weird, honestly, because obviously you're younger than me, and trust me, it was something I wasn't really aware of until probably the last few years. And like I say, it's just crept in. I don't know if it might have been around lockdown, having so much separation from people.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden coming out of lockdown and being like, God, he's annoying. That's annoying, or whatever it might be. But I am usually quite charismatic and sort of chatting to people. But it's that is definitely something that's creeping into my personality.
and do you walk away and think, I don't know where that came from?
Yeah, but then I sort of convinced myself that I had a right to say it. Well, if you didn't, someone else did, because it's a bit like I grew up and I was go out and you run around in the street, you played with all the other kids, and there was community parenting. There was, it wouldn't be a problem that the lady three doors down told you off, or, this is going back to the headmaster grabbing you by the ear type thing. Do you know what I mean? It was like that type of involvement. So you learn respect. And obviously nowadays I just find the complete opposite. It's just, and that sometimes there's something inside me that just goes, God, I'm not sitting very comfortable with this. Like I was on a train the other day, and the guy just playing his music really out loud, and it's just like, mate, put your headphones on. Do you know what I mean? Or talking, you know what I mean? It's just like, and I think to myself, why is that bothering me so much? But it was, but no one was saying a thing, and it was just like, why? It's just like we're scared of the confrontation or
I was
something.
going to say, I think a lot of people are scared of confrontation. They're great over a text, great over an email.
Yep.
First thing I do whenever I've had a tough conversation with like clients, ex-clients, or anything like that, I'll pick up the phone.
Yeah.
And they've gone from sending an email like, you've done this, you've done that. I'm like, oh, how you doing? Are you all right?
Yeah.
Go, yeah, I'm good. Okay, you've literally sent me an email 1 minute ago, like really upset. Let's talk about it. What can we do? And I think it makes such a difference, like talking, and then in person it's even better because you can see humans.
Yeah.
Interestingly, actually, on that, I was talking to my wife the other day. We were driving along and she had road rage. She definitely gets it worse than me, but she'll argue the opposite. But if it's another car, you get really stressed and you get really wound up. But if someone walks across you in the street or cuts you up walking, you don't shout at them.
No,
you don't start swearing at them. And I think it's because it's like not humanized.
Yeah.
So you're shouting at the car rather than the person. So it's like you can do it. Whereas when there's a person stood there, we're almost like scared of the confrontation, scared of that speaking out.
Yeah, I think like you say, maybe it's because you're in there and they can't be heard either. Like you say, it's like you say, you are right. People hate confrontation. It's really weird actually because the times I mentioned when I have sort of said something, whether it's publicly or whatever, and people are really, really apologetic, or they often. I mean, I don't think there's been many situations where somebody sort of just told me to go away, in a different way. But generally speaking, they've recognised, what was it? Oh, sorry, yeah, I'll go and pick that up, or whatever it might be. So, and it's just excuse me, the bin's over there. And it's just little things like that, and he's sorry, mate, yeah, and they would just go and do it. So, I feel like that's sort of creeping out society. My kids would like get mortified at the thought of like, me saying something like that. Keep your head down, plug your headphones in, and just ignore it. And it's just like, wow.
Yeah. Don't get involved. If you ignore it, it's never happened.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, this has been brilliant. Thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you.
And I'm going to close it there.
Cheers.